Oh, now. Is the audio working now? If anyone's out there besides me. Oh, now. Is the audio working now? If anyone's out there besides me. Oh, yeah, I can hear myself. All right, yeah. Christian, I can hear you. I mean, I can see you. All right. I'm just trying to figure out how to share this screen. That's the one more thing I just have to figure out. Uh, now, let's see. I think I'm better off just uploading videos. Okay, good. Very good now. Yeah, so far, as I look at my YouTube channel that's been silenced by Susan, aka YouTube, as I look at it with two strikes, just one more strike and it's gone. I have 10 days left before I can upload again. So I decided to practice on this smaller channel until I get my channel back. And if I can make it to 1,000 subs before they completely remove my channel, I'll start live streaming on that once I figure it out. Yes, CommieTube indeed. Now, the video that they struck me for was 8 days old. It was a video that I made about Monica Lewinsky. And see, if I figure out how to share screen, I could show. But right now, I'm just going to look at what I saved. It was about Monica Lewinsky getting a TV deal. Now, I can kind of understand why they struck it, because in the title it says President Penis Sucker Monica Lewinsky gets TV deal 23 years later, and then after that was something about uh, she's still making money off a blowjob. Like that was the part of the title, so I can kind of understand why they struck that one. But it was 8 days ago, so they had to go back 8 days to get that one. Is Monica one? No, Monica Lewinsky was an intern for Bill Clinton back in the 90s when he was president, and she gave him fellatio or oral sex in the Oval Office. And it was a big little scandal. They tried to impeach him, but he served his second term. But since then, she's been famous for giving the president oral. Yeah, yeah, President or former President Bill Clinton. Yeah, and Bill Clinton was a part of the title, so maybe, but it wasn't that. It was because I put, not explicit, because I used the proper term. I used penis. I didn't say dick. But yeah, I can kind of understand why they struck that. But it was from 8 days ago, and they didn't give me a warning. And the fact that they're paying so much attention to a channel that's under 600 subs lets me know I'm doing something right. I just have to be more mindful how I title my videos and what subject matter I talk about. Like, I can't talk about the coof, the virus, and can't talk about the vote or anything like that. I upload those videos to BitChute, so I can still talk about it without risking my YouTube channel. So I'll just be more careful next time, because the first strike that I got is supposed to be removed August 1st. So when I get my channel back July 8th, this is what it says on my YouTube. I'm supposed to get the channel back where I can upload again. No, not July 8th. August 1st is when the first strike expires. July 8th is when I can upload again. So I have about, 22 days to survive until August 1st when they'll remove a strike. And then the second strike will get removed September 22nd. So I have to be mindful about how I title things until August 1st and the 22nd. So my channel isn't permanently removed. Yeah. I'll probably have to put that in the hashtag. The tags, alphabet sex cult. I'll probably have to put it in the tags because they'll probably strike me for that. I've private a few videos and I've changed the title of a number of my videos since I've been on this forced hiatus by YouTube. So yeah, I mean, it's clear. I don't expect fairness in this situation. This indeed is a cultural war. I'm their enemy and they are my enemy. So I don't expect them to be fair. So I won't complain about it like other YouTubers do. Like, oh, YouTube's not fair. Twitter's not fair. I'm like, they're not supposed to be fair. They're your enemy. I mean, they're clear Marxists, communists, using fascist tactics. So I expect them to do what they're doing. Yeah, I changed it from ungrateful. I think I put ungrateful Asian actor to struggling. I just said struggling actor, because I can see them going back to that. Yeah, and I changed what else? I changed the Macy Gray video title from retard, and I just called her singer. But yeah, it's most, again, the things most important is the content within the video. So I can be more mindful with the title because I've said all kinds of stuff in the video. But the things that have gotten me struck that I can recall is the title of the video and hashtagging about COVID and things of that nature. But again, they can find any reason. They can get me for a thumbnail that they don't like. So I just have to be careful all around, at least until I make it to August 1st, when one of the two strikes will be removed. Yeah, and even because I'm trying to get to this magical number when you can get monetization, and that's 1,000 subs with 4,000 hours. But even if I reach that, I don't expect them to monetize me. But I at least want to reach those numbers because those numbers means I have more people listening, and then maybe I can get them to support through other means. Because I actually have a plan for alternative media. That doesn't just involve writing, but it's about setting up various infrastructures and things of that nature. But I can't do any of that without, investors, sponsors. And I rather my investors and sponsors be from an audience. Because if you get investors and sponsors from corporations, then you will have to kneel. You will have to bend the knee. And that's a little thing that annoys me about certain big channels where all they want to do is just complain about the mainstream and not provide an alternative when they could. I mean, they have the audience that are active. They're super chatting them. They have memberships. But all they do with that is just continue complain. They continue to complain about the mainstream instead of creating an alternative because they're waiting for it to change. But it will never change. Hollywood has always been like this. The only difference between now and then was back then they had to be more subtle because society, quite frankly, had higher standards morally, and they would literally lynch people back in the day if they did the nonsense that they were doing now in the mainstream. So they had to be subtle with each and every generation, which is why they always seek to create generational divides with entertainment. You know, they create this thing called pop culture, and pop culture essentially focuses on the youth. You know, back in the 50s and 60s, they hated pop culture with acts like Elvis Presley, James Dean in the movie Rebel Without a Cause, the Beatles, rock and roll. Yeah, Hollywood always come after the kids. I mean, if you look up Baby Burlesque with Shirley Temple, you see those images where they have a damn near toddler. Well, actually, they have several toddlers dressed in burlesque costuming. And that was back in the early 20th century, like the 1930s and perhaps 40s. But I know for a fact it was like in the 1930s. And that was way back then. So if you look at Shirley Temple and Baby Burlesque in the early 20th century, and you look at today's cuties and pride parades and blues clues and Sesame Street, there's really no difference. It's the same agenda, just more explicit now. Yeah. Uh, yep. And I encourage whoever listens to this live stream after it's uploaded, I encourage you to just simply research everything that I talk about. Don't take my word for it, because I want people to be fact finders for themselves, like I've been. I've listened to other YouTubers, and when they mention things, I look it up for myself. I don't want an idiot audience just listening to what I say. I want them to search for it for themselves, because everything I'm going to talk about is facts, is verifiable facts. No, kids shouldn't be going there at all. But they they have kids there because they're they have children there because they are actively recruiting children. Since they can't reproduce on their own, the only way that they can grow their population is by recruiting people when they're children. So that's why you have the adoption agencies allowing these people to collect children and indoctrinate them. And then you have idiot liberal parents who bring who voluntarily bring their kids to these things, and they're actively sexually recruiting children. The stuff that goes on during those parades would be illegal in most circles. Yep, Shirley Temple. Oh, let me see. Show the comment. There you go. I just looked up Shirley Temple Baby Burlesque, and all I can say is yuck. Yeah, just out and out pedophilia. But, and the pathetic thing about it is, people have always been obsessed with being famous. The only difference between now and then is that back then they didn't have the outlet to grab hold of that fame. And so people would cart their children out into Hollywood and pretty much peddle them around in auditions. So their child can get famous, and through their child getting famous, they have some semi clout and fame. And of course, you can't forget the fortune, because, the parents or the guardians of the child get the money that the child makes in the industry. And these parents are shameless, and they're still out there today, you know, sending their kids out on auditions, allowing them to be on movie sets and commercial sets and the sets of music videos all by themselves with strange adults, all so they can be a part of the entertainment industry. And it's gotten worse with social media, because now people can platform themselves, and they use their Instagrams, their YouTubes, their Twitters and what other and all the other social media platforms, and they peddle their kids, giving their babies their own Instagram accounts. Like if I ever had a child, I wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have their own account ever, especially as a damn baby. But people are seeking to make some type of money off their child. Yep. Uh-huh. Exactly. The main target of the T in the alphabet agenda is to turn boys into girls. That's their primary focus. And it's no coincidence that most of the so-called sex changes happens amongst the males. And another thing that I've stated before about the earliest sex change happened back in the 1960s. It happened back in the, yep, they hate men. Yep, men and boys, males in general. But yeah, the youngest sex change happened to a male back in the 60s at 22 months old at John Hopkins University. Trying to because I did a video on that too. Yeah, I forget uh the patient's name, or I should say the victim's name. Yeah, the the male who got the forced sex change at 2020, I mean at 22 months old, he committed suicide later on in life. And I think he was 38 years old when he committed suicide. And they don't talk about that. They mention the doctor who performed sex changes, and they celebrate his name, and they celebrate John Hopkins University, but they don't mention who his first patient was and how old he was and what later on happened to him, because it's part of the agenda to never sully the name of anyone who's been a part of the call. So, of course, they're going to ignore that. Now, if I could just figure out how to share screens, yeah, he should be burning in hell. And that doctor, by the way, he lived a long life. I think he lived into his mid 90s. So he lived a long life. And hopefully he was tortured during that life. But in the afterlife, hopefully he is burning in hell, because he surely does deserve it. And so does all of these people who continue to celebrate him and that agenda. It's sick. Things like growth, was it hormone replacements and puberty blockers? Those things should not exist, especially for children. Should not exist at all. Sickening. Now, it would be much better if I can just share a freaking screen. It looks so easy when I see other people do it. I mean, it is easy. I'm just slow right now, but I'll figure it out. Let me see. Okay, I look at the share screen section, StreamYard, Mozilla Firefox. That's what I'm using right now. Okay. It says only share Firefox with sites you trust. Sharing can allow deceptive sites to browse as you and steal your private data. Okay. Let me see. Allow. Okay, there we go. Now, let me see. Hold up. All right, I'm gonna have to do some interesting things here. Yep, I'm still figuring this out, which is pretty clear as day. All right, let me pull up another browser because I want to be able to see what I'm doing at one end while I'm sharing screen on the other one. So let me see. All right. Because I want to talk about the Quentin Tarantino nonsense. Oh, Yeah, and and I find it funny because, of course, they were going to come after the churches eventually, and there's a lot of moronic church people who still vote Democrat, still support the liberal agenda. But it'll be interesting to see, will they still support them once they make it blatantly clear that they're coming after their church. And so I'm not surprised. Oh, okay, I see. I got the Quentin thing up there. All right. But yeah, they have to come after the church because in the gospel and the scriptures, this is ancient Babylon. Everything that's happening in Hollywood is ancient Babylon. It's pretty much what the scriptures foretold. Things when they used scenarios like Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, this is exactly what they were talking about. Oh, okay, hold on. All right. Yeah, I successfully shared my screen. But yeah, the BET that's just degeneracy central. And it's been that way for some years. BET, again, another so called black network, which is owned by Viacom CBS. And Viacom CBS is owned by the Sumner family. I believe that's their name, which is some, older white liberals who's, pretty much black facing because they have a lot of their ignorant audience believing that BET is some sort of so-called black network when it's headed by, you know, white liberals that have a family, by the way, because while they try to discourage families amongst the public, they all still have their families intact. That's how they continue their generational wealth. It's by having families and partnering with other people who have families, to continue, to continue their reign. People think that the aristocracy has went away. Kings and queens just got replaced by, CEOs and executives or ownerships of corporations. I mean, obviously, some countries still have royalty, like the monarchy in the United Kingdom with the Queen. But again, the true power are the ones who fund everything. You know, where do you get your devices from? Who's the parent company of that? You know, all these production companies and studios, but who are the owners of those things? That's where the real power lies. And when you see the type of charities that they contribute to and the type of political agendas that they fund and sponsor, that's how you find out about who and what they are and what they're trying to push. Because while everyone else is existing in chaos, they persist as rulers and authorities overall. And all you have to do is look to Venezuela and how that country's went to shit with their practicing of socialism. Cuba, same thing. And you see how the general public in China is suffering with the communist government in charge. Yeah, Quentin Tarantino. All I have to say about Quentin, oh, how do I move? All I have to do is, let me see. Yeah. Oh, fuck. All right, let me see. All right. Quentin. Show Quentin. All right, yeah. All I have to say about Quentin is too little, too late. Yeah, I have to get better at this. But anyway, too little, too late with Quentin Tarantino and especially Bill Maher. I mean, Bill Maher, Bill Maher has always been of cancel culture, but his cancel culture was focused on trying to discourage people from investing in the church. And because since his show Politically Incorrect, that was on ABC, and now with his show on HBO, Real Time with Bill Maher, he's always attacked the church. And I know it because I watched both of his shows for some time. Because I found some of his comedy and commentary funny, but I also noticed, his agenda. And so what Bill Maher and Quentin Tarantino is talking about now, because their creativity is being stifled, well, that's been happening to the family and to the church, with people like them always having those things in its crosshairs. So, these people now that are reacting, it's a delayed reaction. They're only reacting now because it's affecting them creatively. It's affecting Quentin Tarantino because he has several films where he uses racial slurs, but it's a part of the story. But he knows these people will cancel culture him, aka communist censorship him, for those movies. And Bill Maher, being a comedian, he doesn't want his creativity stifled either. And so that's the only reason why they're caring about this now, because it's hitting them. Yeah, Bill Maher bashed Stan Lee, and he bashed comic books in general because he's a so-called adult. Yes, exactly. Oh, and Alec Baldwin. I mean, you can find a voicemail right now online of Alec Baldwin calling his daughter a pig. He called his own flesh and blood daughter a pig on a voice recording. And he is a person that is still allowed to work and still allowed to lecture people from his mainstream Hollywood pedestal, even though he called his own daughter a pig. Donald Trump doesn't have any audio out there calling his daughter a pig, but Alec Baldwin does. And plus, his wife is a fake Hispanic who got exposed. Yeah, they're all on that list. I'm trying to, okay, hide. How you stop showing the comment? Now I'm trying to figure that out. Yeah, really slow on this one. Yeah, I'm trying to be able to see my screen and look at the dashboard of this StreamYards at the same time. Like right now, I'm toggling back and forth to looking at my own video under Google Chrome on my What About channel and on Firefox where I have the StreamYard running. But yeah, when I figure this all out, then watch out. But yeah, Quentin Tarantino, too little too late. And I like all of his movies. I mean, literally, he hasn't made a movie that I have disliked. Now, obviously, there are movies that I like more than others, but everything he has done, I have enjoyed. And he's the only one who should make a trilogy, who has earned a trilogy with the Kill Bill franchise. Because we need to see Vivica Fox's daughter character. She needs to do her revenge thing. I mean, it must happen. I mean, they even had a line of dialogue between, was it Uma Thurman and the daughter character, basically saying, if you still feel hot about it, come see me. So we need that third movie. And I would use the actress that played the little girl. I wouldn't use some, what is it? Vivica Fox suggested some singer, Saldana, the chick that plays Race Swap Mary Jane. That's who she suggested. But I think she suggested her because he was trying to kiss ass. But it should be the woman well, now woman who played the little girl, who was the little girl back then, she should come back. And I think that's how Quentin would do it. Because if you look her up, she still looks, she looks good. She's in shape. She's not obese. So yeah, she should be in it. Yeah, Zendaya. Yeah, I forgot it. Her stupid name. Now I'm going to let me see. Let me look up Nikki through YouTube. Let's say Nikki Kill Bill 3. Kill actress. Grown up. Let me see. All right. Let's see. All right. There we go. That's the actress. That's the actress. So she should reclaim her role, not Zendaya. Because look at her. She still looks good. She still looks good. Here's another image. I mean, I'm talking about as an adult. And she's not obese. And they could work her out in martial arts and, to get her fully in shape. And she can play the role that she was playing when she was a little girl. Because I'm see, they've made some other suggestions. Zendaya, of course, is a choice. Some chick named Zaza. Let me look up these other actresses that they're. The chick that was in uh, that Atlanta show on FX. They want her to. They suggested her as well. But yeah, and then you have Uma Thurman's daughter in the movie. Would basically be there to help defend her mother. And then you have Uma Thurman, who's older, and using the fact that she's older as why she's probably not superior. She's not the superior fighter because she's older and more relaxed because over the years she's been able to live in her happily ever after with her daughter. I mean, you could do so much with that. You know, it's the one trilogy that I would love to see get done. Or let me see, what's the her name is Vernetta Green, I think is the actress name. That was a little girl when she did this movie. That's who should that should that's who should do it. And that's Zendaya. All right, and let me see another story I wanted to talk about in my bootleg attempt to live stream. The Static Shock, and how they've changed his origin story and related it to Black Lives Matter. Yeah, this is Warner Media doing this. Warner Media, that who owns DC Comics. DC Comics, which responsible for all of these DC movies. What is your worst month of the year so far? Yeah, worst month of the year most definitely is June, since my channel got struck for a second time and I'm missing out on growth. I could probably be over 600 subs right now. Yeah, because Warner Media, let's see, Warner Media, who owns this character, let me show you who they signed a deal with. BLM co founder. See, this is who Warner Media inked a deal with. Patrice Cullors signs overall deal with Warner Brothers Television Group. Yep, Indie Comics. Hashtag Comicsgate. But yeah, so Static Shock having a connection to BLM is no surprise because look who they have a deal with. The money hustling Patrice, who has about $4 or $5 million homes with her mixed race spouse who's half white. This is who they have a deal with. So the fact that they're doing, yeah, all three of them are lesbo. She's lesbo. The other one has a white female who dresses and acts like a black dude. And then the third one, they haven't revealed, well, you don't have any information about it, but I'm sure she's at least bi. None of them are hetero. None of them are heterosexual. That's a guarantee. And they killed off this guy who was a part of the early stages of BLM during Obama's presidency because he was calling them out. Daring Seals. Uh, there's a little delay on my Google Chrome when they show the image, but yeah, he was calling them out. He was talking about how everybody who was entering BLM all of a sudden had a connection to Hollywood. Uh, they were None of them were heterosexual. He was calling them out, and then of course he got murdered, and his murder is still unsolved. Oh yeah, Disney has their deal with Communist China. I mean, which supersedes BLM by miles because Communist China, I mean, they literally have their own government, and China is active in various industries within the Western world. So the Disney partnership with Communist China far exceeds with uh, a Warner Brothers partnership with BLM, but they still have dealings with BLM because they advertise it throughout their social media and their content. Yep, with the CCP. Yep, and that's a bigger offense. But again, Darian Seals, uh, he was he was misled because he bought into the racialist bullshit. And when you buy into that, you're blinded by race. All you focus on is race. And you have a delayed reaction to seeing what the other agendas are behind this racial politics. And so if you're really trying to help your so-called people or community or yourself, you can't fall into the race politics because that's what the Marxists lead with. They lead with that nonsense and they use some well-intended minds until they don't need them anymore. And then they discard them like they did this guy right here. They use them for what they needed him for, and then they discard them. Sometimes they kill them like they did him, but other times they just impoverish them, make sure they can't get work or any significant position again, which is why, once again, it's important to create alternative media because you're not going to be able to truly fight these people unless you, number one, defund them, and number two, create alternative media that you help fund because they can fall. The Roman Empire fell. The pharaohs of Egypt, they fell. You know, anybody can fall. You just have to have people willing to help them fall. And right now, They have handicapped themselves because they virtue signal so much. They have so many idiots that they have to serve. And that's why they always constantly eating each other and destroying their own. Because this group wants attention and then that group wants attention while this group is getting attention. And they're constantly going after each other. But yeah, this Static Shock thing is no surprise because Warner Media has that connection with BLM directly with the co-founder. And even though she stepped down officially, unofficially, she's still involved. So, that public stepping down don't mean shit to me. I understand you can still do work and still be an agitator without officially being a part of something. Now, if this was a real story, they would focus on, the gangs and the violence on the streets and the propagandas that are behind inciting that violence and creating that environment. Yep, exactly. People value entertainment over everything. That's why I call entertainment religion. Entertainment is religion, and celebrities are their gods. Or I should say, celebrities and brands are their gods. And it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious. They meet the criteria of what it means to be religious or what it means for something to be a god. And again, this is just a reflection of how it was in ancient Rome when you had all of those many gods, those many deities. People think that's something of the ancient past, but that's going on now. The only difference now is that there are more gods than there were before because every celebrity, every brand represents some type of god. And the mainstream in Hollywood is just a conglomerate of religions. And that's why even being disrespected, despite being disrespected, people still want to hold on to this bullshit. And it's just utterly pathetic. Because again, while they rant and rave here, uh, the mainstream rant and raves about BLM and injecting it into their comics, this is going on in real life. I'm going to show you a few Twitter accounts that I like to follow that talks about the nonsense. One of the nonsensical things that's going on in real life. Yeah, I was just getting on to this. Scoon TV. Scoon TV on Twitter. He's a good follow. Now, I'm not on Twitter, but you can still use Twitter. You just have to know the Twitter accounts that you want, and then you just look at their tweets. You can't comment. I don't care to comment. You can't retweet or like. I don't care to do that. I just want to see the tweets. And on Twitter, this is what's going on in real life. Going after another male staple or staple of manhood, football, by calling football gay and calling it transgender. Oh man, these people are usurpers, social terrorists. Every single thing that you liked or enjoyed, they will invade. And football is just yet another example of it. These people are pieces of shit. But, I haven't watched a football game in some time now. And any man who cares about his son or who cares about himself shouldn't be watching football any longer either. Any so-called conservative shouldn't be watching football any longer. Yeah, exactly. I don't watch football. Haven't watched the NBA. Only reason why I watched the NBA recently was back when Kawhi Leonard was playing with the Raptors, and it was interesting to see someone who wasn't an attention whore win a championship. So I wanted to watch that, and I mainly watched it through the highlights on YouTube. Yeah, basketball. You're not missing much. The best basketball occurred in the 90s and the first decade of the 20th century. During the Kobe Shaq Lakers from like 2000 to about 2004. And once it got into LeBron's league, that's when it started to decline more and more and more. But yeah, here's what's going on in real life outside of football. Scott Greer, another Twitter account that I like to follow. And even if some of these uh, dudes have some sort of race issue, racism, I don't care. I'm all about the truth. And I could give two shits if someone is actually racist. Just have some goddamn respect. Because that's how they do it in prison. You have legit neo Nazis who work with the black gangs and Hispanic gangs so they can do business. So like, that shit doesn't bother me. It doesn't faze me. I'm more worried about the my fellow so-called people who are out here in these streets killing indiscriminately. They don't care if you're so-called black or so-called white. They're savages that's just out here murdering people. And they're being enabled by the mainstream in Hollywood with the victimhood narratives. So, they're no allies of mine. Okay, here's another thing that recently happened. We had 500 plus people. Hold on, let me see. Let me read this. Today we show up to at Joe Biden's doorstep with 500 plus people and blockaded every entrance to the White House, demanding that he include a fully funded hashtag civilian climate corps in his infrastructure bill. Secret Service then arrested dozens of us. Okay, this just happened. This just happened, and you haven't been hearing about it like you heard about what happened January 6th of this year, where people were calling it insurrection and sedition, all of that nonsensical language. But here they are, you know, doing their climate change nonsense. And guess what will happen? None of them will get any serious time, and they won't be blasted throughout mainstream media because they're hypocrites and full of shit. They don't care about what happened to January 6th. They were destroying public property and talking about defund the police, so they don't care. Yeah, here's you don't have to wait until July 4th. I'm sure they're going to be active then, but this happened recently, right here. Sunrise Movement, and they have a verification on their Twitter. Blue check marks. Blue check marks who encouraged 500 plus people to, as they say, storm Joe Biden's doorstep, and they're still verified on Twitter for inciting such activity. Pieces of shit. And this is why I don't simp for the police. I mean, I know that right now there's no better alternative, but law enforcement is complicit because, again, they're following orders when any self respecting law enforcement officer should be quitting and setting up an alternative, because they'll they'll do as they're told and attack people during January 6th, but treat like kid gloves these liberal terrorists, like they did during 2020 riots and like they're doing right here now. Yeah, they use the word protest for dumbasses who will believe it, but we know in reality they're rioters. It's the same thing. It's like, oh, we're anti-fascist, but in reality, you're fascist because you have the corporations on your side pushing your agenda. Or that, we're all about, equality, the alphabet sex cult, when you're just predators and pedophiles. You know, it doesn't matter what words they use, because it's all bullshit. It's what they actually do. And we see what they do. And of course, you look at the thread of this Twitter post, there's plenty of people defending this nonsense. Yeah. And the Twitter account mockingly states the Republicans found this tweet with some cartoon figure uh, looking obnoxious. Yeah, they found this tweet and they're highlighting the hypocrisy. And again, they still have their blue check mark, even though they incited terrorist acts based on their own definition. Yeah, pieces of shit, plain and simple. It would be much better if we had our own separate societies within the United States. Because, and again, we would only have separate societies for about a couple of months, maybe 2 years at the most. Because while the sane people are living society the way it should be lived, these people would destroy their part of the country within a matter of months or maybe a couple of years. I mean, we saw what happened in Seattle with Chaz. Like, they ruined that quickly. Because they aren't civilized. They can't have their own society. All they do is destroy. And again, I'm just looking at the commenters, and most of the replies about all the Republicans have found this comment. Ha ha ha. Yeah, any Republican that has found it, they're highlighting your hypocrisy. Yeah, Hollywood gave Chaz their blessing. They're all in. They're all in this together, and they're all at war with people. It's just we need conservatives, Republicans, so-called centrists, libertarians, or people who just tired of woke culture, as they put it. We just need them to realize this is a war and not just bullshit that we complain about or highlight the double standards in. They're at war with you, dummy. Of course, they're going to have double standards for their own. They're at war. You should be too, dummies. Let's see. We have they have this commenter. What they say? Scare tactics scare people. One commenter put, and then the reply said they should be scared. They're failing the country and the world by not addressing the climate crisis. Know who's scared? Those of us born into a world of politicians and capitalists utilizing climate destroying tactics to maintain power at the expense of all else. They should be scared. Like this soy little bitch would do anything. And look at their Twitter bio. What's it? Cryptid Jew, aromantic, asexual, agender, alistic, AH, ADHD. Again, a bunch of nonsense. Again, peddling this climate change bullshit. And again, climate change is just about claiming other people's property and other people's business and disrupting all of that. But of course, they shit in the streets, and use drugs and engage in various other polluting activities. Oh yeah, pirates life forever. Pirates life forever. Mm-mm. Just perusing Twitter. I know the dead silence isn't good, so let me keep talking. Yeah, okay, here's one commenter posting. There is no climate crisis, you hysterical nutter. You are in a doomsday cult. Yeah. And then the person that's defending this climate crisis nonsense replies, a cult led by who? And can I get citations from credible scientific sources that disprove the past 60 years of climate science, please? Okay, again, when these people reference science, I just laugh because they count more than two genders. Anyone who counts more than two genders can never reference science ever. Simple as that. You don't believe in fucking science. You believe in political science, meaning the political favoriting, political bias scientific community that cites pseudo science facts that you approve of. But you don't actually care about scientific sources whatsoever. Climate change nonsense. But yeah, there's always something to complain about. And meanwhile, the celebrities that they champion, like Leonardo DiCaprio, has a private jet that he loves flying his models around on. And he has his private yacht that he loves having his young models on as he bangs them and do drugs, I'm sure, on those private yachts and private planes that has far worse emissions than automobiles. Yeah, I won't bother getting Twitter either. I mean, if it helps me grow my channel, I'll just use it as a way to share links and posts and try to bring people to my YouTube. But actually caring about having Twitter, no, I don't care. And currently, I still don't have a Twitter account because after getting banned myself for the fourth time, I decided not to bother creating another email account just to get Twitter. But yeah, let me find another interesting activity going on. Oh, here we have in Rochester, New York, some more violent activity by the oppressed. Look at them standing around, recording it, encouraging it, while these two beasts fight in what looks like a parking lot. This is in Rochester, New York. Look at them. This is BLM. This is Black Lives Matter right here. BLM, Black Lives Matter at work. Her pants coming off. Yeah. These little beasts love to fight. Love to fight, love to bang, and love to shoot. One dead, three wounded at a Walmart parking lot. Yeah. And this is what the mainstream, again, will avoid covering as they create hysterics over white supremacy. And look, the only people trying to break it up is some Caucasian female. And she's probably some idiot white liberal. So I wish she got hit too for being a dumbass. Yeah. hmm And unfortunately, I still live within the nonsense as I hear gunshots outside all the time. This is how these motherfuckers always been with their bullshit. And let's look at the comments underneath this video, see what they have to say. Okay, we have a top commenter here saying, I'd say I feel shame for one of the cities I've lived in, but it's not isolated to any one place at this point. And then another commenter follows, Walmart shooters lives matter. I like that one, that was funny. And here's another commenter. I hear the women's hormones are increasing in testosterone as men's are going down. The more fights I see like this, the more I agree. Okay, and here's Bill's Mafia Justin. He's defending this nonsense. These racist comments make me so mad. Okay, so he's a white liberal, white savior, white guilter. He should be in New York breaking up these fights and talking about the racists on Twitter, talking about him so he can get his dumb ass shot, like that stupid doctoral candidate got shot in Chicago for being a stupid ass white liberal. Pretending that this isn't a cultural issue and not some sort of other racist issue. So, yeah. And I'm seeing him looking at people replying to him. And most of them are insulting him deservingly so. But yeah, this Bill's Mafia Justin, who's saying the comments are racist under this post, he deserves. And look, he has his mask hanging off in his avatar, in his Twitter avatar. So of course, you knew he would be a type to defend this nonsense. He deserves to be among these people since he cares so much about the racist comments directed towards them. Yeah, the only way you can defend this is by being a retarded white liberal. That's the only way you can defend this bullshit. And again, like I said, they deserve to suffer the consequences that white liberals deserve to suffer. It's just unfortunate that it wasn't more people like him in this crowd trying to break this up. Because I'm sure they would have stopped fighting and stopped shooting because some white liberal savior said, break it up. They're going to make fun of you guys on Twitter. Dumbass. Now let's find some more brutality stories because it's so many of them. I mean, they're constant. You don't need to go. Look at this. Look at these Jabba the Hutts. You don't need to go back to slavery days or civil rights era days to find the conflicts that we're talking about. They're happening today. 1 day ago, hours ago. you can find the nonsense going on. And look at this. This is body positivity for you. We have three Jabba the Hutts in their weaves. You see in the middle, they have their little white liberal friend who's a behemoth as well. Yeah, Jabba the Thoughts. Jabba the Thoughts. Jabba the Hutts. Jabba the Thoughts. Matter of fact, damn, I wish I could share my screen because I have a little template that I created through Paint where like I was going to do some creative writing while I talk about these stories and then use these stories to mash up and merge into an original premise and storyline based off of these current events and entertainment stories. But yeah, I'll practice more. Probably later on tonight, or like maybe like 3 a.m. when no one's going to be watching, and then I can just mess up as much as possible. But since I have one viewer, I'm not going to focus on that right now. Yes, pink-haired Lizzo. Yeah, and this is who Lizzo represents, the body positivity. So while they're telling you to wear a mask and worried about COVID, they're encouraging obesity that kills, that's a top killer of females, especially black females. Heart disease, high blood pressure, kills people like this a lot. Far more than they can imagine so-called COVID kills anyone. But yeah, more nonsense and degeneracy being advertised. Let me see what else is here on this. So this is a Twitter account, Scoon TV, Scott Greer. And again, you don't have to have Twitter to follow these accounts. Just know the name of these accounts, put them in your URL, and you can find them. Damn, I had another Twitter account. Let me go find out. Can't remember it off the top of my head. Now I'm going on Google Chrome, which you can't see right now because I'm only sharing Firefox. And look up the other Twitter account. There's 4 Twitter accounts that I look to. And that's where I get a lot of news because it's legitimate news because they're sharing actual video of these things going down. It's no one's opinion. There's video of these events unfolding. So that's how you know they're legit. You don't need to read an article about it or watch a finely produced production. Just see video of the nonsense that's going on out here in these streets. All right. So here's another one that I've like to look up. All right. Well, let me get back to being able to view my screen again. Not Okay Comics. Let's see what he has. Well, I'm assuming it's a he that runs this account. Let's see what he is following. This is what I thought was funny. He quote tweeted a tweet by Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's one of these scientists that's more of a celebrity than a scientist. And he quote tweeted a tweet that said, "Space aliens may be surprised to learn that humans have multiple languages, cultures, and traditions, and we kill one another because of it." And then he quote tweeted with what looks like a Dragon Ball Z character saying monkey. And I really can't stand this Neil deGrasse guy because he's more of a celebrity than anything. He's been on Bill Maher, and he's another one that loves going after the church and religion. He's an astrophysicist, and people like him, again, their reason for going after the church was talking about, they care about evidence and facts. But he's another one of these scientists that don't call out the more than two gender crowd. If he cares about science, why isn't he saying anything about these anti biology people? I mean, biology is of science. He should be defending it. He should be calling them out the way he has called out church folks and religious folks. But he's silent because he's a part of the agenda. Fake scientists. Just again, using science as a tool to separate people from their religion, from their church, from their community. Just another full of shit moron. Now, how long have I been going? Let me see. Oh, goodness. 1 hour? Oh, I can mumble. I can mumble on. So, yeah, so anyway, Not Okay Comics. That's another Twitter. Again, just know the URL or, type it in the search and you can find these accounts, see these stories. And here's the last Twitter account that I enjoy looking up. Uh, Battle Beagle at Harmless Yard Dog. And again, another account that shares a lot of stories that I talk about and sometimes make videos from. And on this account, Battle Beagle, he retweeted some more anti-white propaganda, and it came from a Manchester school district, and it was in an effort to promote, well, not just promote, but execute white privilege training. White privilege training, and again, this comes from other so-called white people. That's why it's truly insidious, because again, white doesn't mean the actual race of people, because first of all, white isn't a race, it's a color coded designation. White is simply a brand name. It's a brand name that they put on things like, the nuclear family, hard work, patience, respect for the law. And I've showed that chart that was written up by Judith Katz that stated what white culture or whiteness was. And so when they're promoting anti-white propaganda, understand it's cultural based. It's not about actual race, because again, if it was actually about the people, all of the people of the so-called white race, then white liberals would be included in that, and they all would have to stand down from their positions. But they're not doing any of that, because again, it's not about all of the people. But yeah, Battle Beagle is another account. And here we have a mainstream opinion piece promoting bestiality. Why is bestiality so disgusting? From a utilitarian point of view, zoophilia is no more immoral than man eating. Yeah, exactly. And I wish I could have did that story on my What About channel. I think that would have got, a couple of hundred views, because, I talked about, you know, how they're changing slave one, but they're still the number one allies of the slave nation known as Communist China. And again, no self-respecting Star Wars fan should still be giving these people money. Not for action figures based on Gina Carano, not for physical media, none of it. Give them $0 and instead create your own. Create your own. Create your own. Like Comicsgate has created their own. And hopefully my screen switch over. Yeah, here we go. Now, this right here represents a bunch of people who have decided to take it upon themselves to create alternatives to the mainstream and not just simply complain about it or call it out in its double standards. I'm trying to get that whole figure in here just to show you how much money people have been able to crowdfund being independent. $8.1 million. Just a couple of indie folks have gotten together. Right here, you see over 200 projects, 249 to be exact. And these are all people who are actively creating alternative media through comic books and graphic novels. Comic books and graphic novels that can eventually be adapted into short animations, short films, full length, full length features, full length feature films and animations, merchandise like action figures, tabletop games because they've taken over the tabletop space. They've recently kicked out the son of the Dungeons and Dragon creator. So again, create your own and gatekeep the hell out of it. Anybody that whispers or utters any type of SJW nonsense, boot them, kick them out, because you don't need these insidious bastards invading your space. All right, I'm about to stop because I can't believe I was able to go on for this long. And I was worried about that. I was worried about, would I be able to talk nonstop and not have any dead air? And I think I was 98% successful at that, outside of, the little bit of dead air at the beginning because I didn't know how to have my audio share. Outside of that, I've been talking straight for, let's see, how long has it been? Hour and 26 minutes. Don't worry. When I get great at this, especially on my channel, once it reached 1,000 or more views, subs, and I start getting regular views in the hundreds and thousands. But, by then I'll be much better at this. I'm just trying to share this template real quick before I close this out. Now, okay, how do I share? All right, let me see. What is this? All right, just let me freaking share what I want. All right, let me just keep on talking so it's no dead air. Oh, here we go. I think this is what I was trying to show. Hold on, it's not coming up though. It's a little template thing. All right. Basically, it was a template that I made in Paint, and what you've been seeing in the mashup videos, where I took what was it, Juneteenth riots, uh, Disney, Disney Snow White, and then the race swap actress in Snow White, and then Sesame Street, and how I put that all together. I basically created a template for that, and I wanted to do one of those mashups live on stream, but my lack of knowledge on how to share this is preventing me from doing what I want to do and showing this. Yeah, if you have something else to do, please feel free to exit this stream because I'm just trying to figure out this nonsense for later. Uh, so yeah, it said that it was sharing it, but it's just showing a gut. All right, let me try this one more time. Let me remove this. Stop the screen. All right, peace out, Christian. Have a nice day. Now I'm just going to sit here and figure this thing out. All right, it says Google Chrome. All right, huh? Yeah. Oh, okay. This is what I want to share. All right, here we go. Let me see. All right, yeah, here we go. Allow. Now, that's being shared. Oh, okay. All right, now the only problem is I want to be able to share this and simultaneously be able to see myself work on this. So I can only wonder, how do the pros do it? All right, let me see. I'm just going to gather a couple of images from. I'm going to look at my Google Chrome and see how it looks. Okay, that's how that looks. Hmm. I want that to be larger though. The shared screen. How can I make that larger? Okay, let me see. Full screen layout. Hey, there we go. Okay, not such a dummy after all. All right, and I can see it on my Google Chrome. All right, now let me gather a few images. Let me see. Um, Decoder for BLM. All right, let me use this image here from the Static Shock nonsense. Copy paste. All right, fit that into my homemade template. Get that in there within the borders. And I'm gonna create a template. I'm gonna create a mashup merge live for the first time. And I'll leave it to my 7 subscribers to watch this later. Again, subscribe to my channel, What About All, on YouTube, because that's where I upload every day at least 3 to 4 videos. Sometimes I do 6, sometimes I do 7, because what I lack in the skill of editing, like people like Mahler is able to do, I make up with high volume. And then, of course, I just don't hold back. I mean, and you can't hold back. Like, what the hell, man? Call this bullshit out. People want to avoid mentioning politics while they're talking entertainment, when that's all this entertainment is. This entertainment is literally the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. And the Republicans are just cucks who are controlled opposition. I mean, really they really aren't the opposition as some unfortunate Republican loyalists may think. They're controlled opposition. All right, I got the Black Lives Matter portion of the mashup merge presented. Now, the other aspect of the mashup merge is the CW's Jane Austen. Now, CW's Jane Austen looks to uh, rewrite the wrongs of our past time once again and focus Jane Austen's anthology series in our time of inequality and disconnection. So a Martin Austen, even though the female who wrote this was writing for her time, they're going to put it in what they call our time, because again, this has nothing to do with my time. This is just their delusion that they're propagating through media. Okay, we'll put that there. Jane Austen. And, and I'm sure some may wonder, how can you create an interesting premise for a story or storyline for a story out of this? Well, I can, believe it or not. Yeah, I can. You can make anything interesting. And again, anybody can come up with stories, I believe, because since from a young age, we're all coming up with stories. Lying, that's storytelling. You know, Lying, people who lie, you come up with little narratives to get your parent or parents or whomever you're in trouble with and you're trying to convince otherwise. We all come up with little stories for some of them. Some are better than others, but the fact is we all engage in storytelling. You just have to put forth an effort. Okay, the next element of the mashup will be Boba Fett's ship, Slave One, and how that's being renamed by Disney Star Wars, because like all of the progressive libtards, they equate slavery to meaning black. And sadly enough, there's plenty of so-called black people who engage in this nonsense. Okay, I need to make some of these little image templates wider naturally. Okay, But again, this is not the official show that I'll be doing. All right, there we go. So we have Black Lives Matter with with Static Shock as the featured character, and his origin having a BLM involvement. And then you have Martin Jane Austen taking narratives from about the 18th century, 17th century, and modernizing them with, I'm sure, a bunch of diversity casting and POC inserts and sexuality identity inserts that didn't exist back then. But yeah, mashing that up and merging that with Slave One. So let's get to some texting. Some writing. Because, I'm not literally writing, I'm typing. But just for the sake of conversation, let's just say it's writing. So we take let me enlarge this. Make this text bigger. And put it, let me see, put it at 48. See how much that, okay. I think that's visible. Let me look at Google Chrome. Yeah, it's visible. So you take the world of Martin Jane Austen, and let's see, with the characters of BLM Static Shock, uh, uh, yeah, BLM Static Shock, and let's see, let's see, Slave One, set it in the story of Slave One spaceship. Okay. Now let me highlight the things that's being mashed and merged with red text so you can really see what's being focused on in this mashup. I need to have some more enthusiasm in my voice. My voice can sound boring. Let me see if I can do that, modify my voice here. All right, guys. So we're mashing up and merging the Martin Jane Austen that the CW is doing with the characters of BLM Static Shock that woke DC Comics and Warner Media is doing, and setting it in the story of Star Wars, Disney Star Wars, Slave One spaceship renaming. And I think the rename is the Starship. Okay, how can you make a story out of that? Let's start with the premise. Now, the images that you see at the side will work as the source material in this situation. And from the source material, aka the inspiration for this, we will mash up these things and merge them into its own original story. Okay, what's the premise? Let's take the character Static Shock. Static Shock, who is a super powered activist treated as a superhero by some and viewed as a super villain by others. And in his quest to fight for change, Static Shock employs, well, let me say, Static Shock seeks the aid of the empire through its, see, through its corporate allies. See, through its corporate allies and companies. Again, this is live, folks. So excuse any grammar nonsense. Usually I use Grammarly to help save me on some of the uh, punctuations and other grammatical errors. Okay, so let me read what I have so far. Static Shock, who is a superpowered activist, treated as a superhero by some and viewed as a supervillain by others, seeks, okay, let me say them, because seeks the aid of the empire seeks the aid of the empire through its corporate allies and companies while being a visible enemy of that same empire. And so the empire obviously would be the Star Wars reference. So let me highlight those things that reference each other in the mashup. Okay. All right. Now let's go into the storyline. Now, when I'm thinking about the storyline, I'm trying to, because in the premise I didn't do this, but in the storyline I'm trying to make the connection of BLM Static Shock to Slave One of Star Wars to Jane Austen or Martin Jane Austen. And what I'm thinking about so far is that somehow through some abilities or powers, Static Shock is able to literally travel through time and space to the era of Jane Austen's novels, which is set in the, I don't know, 17th century, 18th century. And while there, uh, Static Shock engages in several acts which changes history and makes it more diverse. And so all of the people who existed back then literally get swapped, but swapped through reproduction, which is done through seduction, you know, consensual acts of sex, but also non-consensual acts of sex through rape, but a rape that is kept secret throughout the annals of time because Static Shock decided in order in order to change what exists now, we must change what existed then. And he chooses the era of the Jane Austen novel, which leads into the modern Jane Austen that is of the CW. You see that? That's how I would connect those things. And then Slave One would represent the Empire, because, Slave One and Boba Fett in the true Star Wars movie was a collaborator with the Empire. And so he uses maybe not superpowers, maybe he uses that starship or a starship like it to travel in the past. And so when he makes these changes and changes uh, changes the now by changing the past, we fast forward to and here's where the Slave One spaceship happens. You have Slave One, whose name has now changed due to time changing events, but they still actively engage in slavery. But now it's just a certain groups of people being slaves. A diverse group, but a diverse group who've all been deemed white or white supremacy. And so you have Slave One, whose name has been changed, still engaging in slavery. Obviously, Boba Fett's ship itself didn't engage in slavery, but I'm using the concepts that they're projecting onto Slave One as a part of this story. So anyway, Slave One. Let me type some of this down. Oh, but before I type it down, let me finish. So Slave One engages is part of a slave trading company, an intergalactic slave trading company of people who have been deemed evil, i.e., whites. And like that's how you connect all three of these stories. BLM Static Shock, he's the agent provocateur who goes to the past, through his various acts. He changes it, uh, Jane Austen, into a Martin representation. Then you come back to the present and Slave One, whose name has been changed due to time changing events, but Slave One is still engaging in slavery, which is the concept that they projected onto it. But of course, Static Shock is still treated through the propagandas as a superhero that saved the world. And he's viewed as a villain by those who know better or who have a sense of knowing better since things have been changed. And like that's how I would do a Static Shock, Slave One, Jane Austen mashup and merge. So now let me put it down into words and story. Okay. Slave One is part of a cosmic fleet of slave traders throughout the galaxy. And Static Shock is leading an activist campaign to change the names of what is it? To change the symbols of oppressive rule. All right, let me highlight slave one, static shock. Mm-mm. But there those within the empire who refuse to, who refuse to. Traditionalists still celebrate their history. And let's see. Let me read what I have so far. Slave one is a part of a cosmic fleet of. Oh, let me see. It's a part of a cosmic fleet of starships, slave trading throughout the galaxy. Static Shock is leading an activist campaign by being a militant activist who seeks to change the symbols of oppressive rule. But there are those within the empire who refuse to. Refuse to change. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah. Again, this is just a rough. And my first time doing this live. Okay. But there are those within the empire who refuse to change anything. Traditionalists who still celebrate traditionalists who still celebrate their history and combat whoever let me see. Impressible. Let's see. Static Shock allies within empire. Primarily within okay, Static Shock has allies within the empire, primarily those within the Ministry of Media and Science. Yeah. I think I probably spelled that word wrong. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, I'm good. All right, I'm about to finish up here. I'll be much better next time. All right. Where was I? Uh, mm, and he uses those connections to travel via space and time to change the present by changing past. Any means. Instead of calling it the Victorian era or the Victorian era, I'll call it the uh, Jane era. That sounds too plain. I'll call it the Austen era, which makes reference to what they're doing with Martin Austen with the CW. Okay, there we go. Every all three referenced, made reference to, and mentioned in the premise storyline, creating once again another successful mashup merge of three different entertainment stories and current events, because BLM represents a current event. But luckily with Static Shock, I got two birds with one stone. You know, got BLM, which is a current event within a fiction. So let's go over the premise. Static Shock, who is a superpowered activist, treated as a superhero by some and viewed as a supervillain by others, seeks the aid of the Empire through its corporate allies and companies while being a visible enemy of that same empire. Storyline: Slave One is a part of a cosmic fleet of starships, slave trading. Hold up, slave trading throughout the galaxy. Static Shock is leading an activist campaign by being a militant activist who seeks to change the symbols of oppressive rule. But there are those within the empire who refuse to change anything. Traditionalists who still celebrate, I'm going to say, who celebrate. Traditionalists who celebrate their history and combat whoever tries to change it. Static Shock has allies within the empire, primarily those within the Ministry of Media and Science. And I say it. And he uses those connections to, to aboard a starship that can travel to aboard, And he uses those connections to not to abort, and he uses those connections to obtain a rare starship that can travel through, oh boy, probably need to maybe lessen this text, that can travel through space and time, enabling him to change the present by changing the past by any means. By any means via the Austen era. There we go. All right. Let me reread the storyline. Storyline. Slave 1 is a part of a cosmic fleet. Well, let me get my voiceover reader voice. Slave 1 is a part of a cosmic fleet of starships, slave trading throughout the galaxy. Static Shock is leading an activist campaign by being a militant activist who seeks to change the symbols of oppressive rule. But there are those within the empire who refuse to change anything, traditionalists who celebrate their history and combat whoever tries to change it. Static Shock has allies within the empire, primarily those within the Ministry of Media and Science, and he uses those connections to obtain a rare starship that can travel through space and time, enabling him to change the present by changing the past by any means via the Austen era. Uh, I keep saying by, I don't like the repeat by. Enabling to change the present by changing the past. By changing the past. Let me just say, by changing the past via the Austen. By changing the past. And then I can write out the whole word through the Austen era. All right, let me see. Enabling him to change the present by changing the past through the Austen era. Okay. Now, let me read premise to storyline. No more corrections. Premise. Static Shock, who is a super-powered activist, treated as a superhero by some and viewed as a supervillain by others, seeks the aid of the Empire through its corporate allies and companies while being a visible enemy of that same empire. Storyline. Slave 1 is a part of a cosmic fleet of starships, slave trading throughout the galaxy. Static Shock is leading an activist campaign by being a militant activist who seeks to change the symbols of oppressive rule. But there are those within the empire who refuse to change anything, traditionalists who celebrate their history and combat whoever tries to change it. Static Shock has allies within the empire, primarily those within the Ministry of Media and Science, and he uses those connections to obtain a rare starship that can travel through space and time, enabling him to change the present by changing the past through the Austen era. There we go. Done and done. Now, what would be the name that I would give something like this? Let me think. Because I always come up with a mashup merge title for it all. So I'll name it. Now I should have created a section where I could put the title at. But yeah, anyway, I'll name this. See, we're talking about Boba Fett 1, Jane Austen. Huh. Maybe I'll call it just the Austen era, or hmm, let's see. Hmm. Static shock, maybe shock, shock era, or hmm. See, now you're listening to me come up with names on the spot, and I'm probably much better at this without live recording, but I need to get used to it. All right, I will just tentatively title this the Austen era, and maybe with a subtitle. Yeah, the Austen era, from slave to shock, or from slaves to shock. Yeah, that sounds like a fun title. Let me just find a clear section to put that there. Next time I'll be sure to have a section to put the title in. But for now, here's the title of the mashup: the Austen era, from slave, from slaves, or from slave to shock. And put the little quotation mark things around it. And put in parentheses indicating this is the title. Mashup, merge. Yep. Got to make this text a little smaller so it can fit. There we go. Mashup, merge, title. And if you're really slow, just point it to it to make it clear. The Austen era, from slave to shock. Mashup, merge, title. And see what I like about that sort of placeholder title, because hell, it could sound official. I mean, it's all placeholder because I'm not going to actually make this into a full thing. Maybe, later on when I build up a platform and actually get my own original stories published, independently. Yeah, and they start to make money. I'll probably revisit all these mashups and just make them into a bunch of anthology series and sort of mini stories, short stories. But yeah, for now, I like this title, The Austen Era, from Slave to Shock. And I might actually make this a video. I have 10 days until I get my true YouTube channel back, the one that now has 589 subs. But yeah, I can't make this video then. These stories will be too old by then. Maybe not. I mean, I know BLM will still be an active nuisance. Yeah, who knows? I'll probably upload this on that then. But I know for a fact, if I do a video on this, I'll upload it on Syol and on my BitChute channel. The Austen era, from slave to shock. Oh, clever. All right, let me save this one. And let me officially close out this stream. I'm gonna make my way back to my Firefox. Wow, I really ran my mouth that long. Well, I hope you suffered through this. 2 hours and 12 minutes. Wow. Okay. I have enough confidence to stream. I can carry a stream talking for a long time. So I confirmed that. I'm just going to wait until they get to 2 hours and 13 minutes exactly. Here we go. Bye.